and welcome to my channel. And today we're gonna talk about Phantasmal Cremation build. I tried to build the cheapest possible version that is capable of doing blighted maps, ravaged blighted maps in fact. And the reason for that is to test whether this build is, let's say, league starting friendly. So this is the setup I have, and we will go through some points I listed in here. So first we will start. How does this build work? Why this build? And I will show you the original guide and the original version. So, well, the build works as like you unearth the corpses and you use cremation, and the cremation links, actually chains and spreads to the ravaged blighted mobs. And ravaged maps have this mod that increases monsters' health by 200%. Right, so 200% more monster life, which makes them having more, let's say, their corpses have more life. For this reason, when you kill a single boss, it will all, let's say, wipe everything else. And for this reason, it makes this build very good at clearing ravaged maps and clearing the hardest versions of ravaged map strategies. Previously, this build was made around Ashes of the Stars, which was quite expensive. As you can check in the original guide, there are items, the concepts and everything explained in details, as the defenses and all the stuff. Although it's 3.18, not much has changed. Mostly this league there were changes to curses. But anyway, this guide makes this build, let's say, pretty expensive. It's not really league starting friendly. It requires 2 Phantasmal version gems plus Aegis Aurora, Ashes of the Stars, and 6 link of Incandescent Heart. So that's quite a lot of currency. My experience is that you couldn't even start with this build not having 50 divines. But yeah, the version I built is around 12 divines of like minimum required items and another 17 of preferred items that you will probably have to buy to clear the hardest version of Ravaged Blight. So with this set, just within 30 divines we can clear, let's say, all the content that we are interested in and enjoy the 10 divines per hour strategies, right? So if you compare the cost, like 30 divines, to the level of income, it's really possible to do within first 2 days of the league, right? So you finish campaign in 1 day, you go to the normal blights on the 2nd day, and on the 3rd day you are probably able to clear the hardest version of Ravaged Blight, whatever it would be, right? So what makes the hardest version of Ravaged Blight? I believe it's a triple teal oil, which makes the run faster, which means that there is a huge number of monsters incoming and they clamp on your crossroads. So for this reason we use the Chilling Tower Freeze Anoint, and then the monsters clamp in one place, and this build is spreading the explosions from the corpses. So the more corpses die in one place, the biggest explosion you have. And when you kill a boss, it will kill everything else because it has that much HP. So it's basically one-shotting all the other bosses. So when you had normally a situation where you clamped like 3-4 bosses, you had to, I don't know, fire them one by one and it could blow your map, right? But with this build, you just kill one boss and it kills everything else. There can be like 100 bosses, they will all die in 1 second. So in this video, I'm showcasing how did I clear the map and what strategy I used. There is some twist to it, how to do it with this build early on. The one thing is that we use one anointment, which is Chill Tower Freeze, so basically standard one. The other one is the Smoothering Tower Slow Down Monsters, although it's not that useful, and I'm thinking whether maybe it's better to go for double Chill Tower Anointment. There are some options like the range or the cast rate, etc. Maybe Empowering Tower, because after playing for a while with this strategy and having this build that week, it seems that we are still not building that much Smoothering Towers because we cannot afford. We need to stunlock enemies. The way to go with this build and this strategy is to clamp monsters in single space, right? So this build works like it explodes nearby corpses, so the more bodies you have in a single place, the bigger damage. So that's pretty important. And like you see in here, I'm just destroying the monsters to get some currency early on to ensure I have money to build the second crossroad. But to be honest, ideally you want the monsters to be stacked around bosses, because you want to kill bosses. The monsters die with any build, and it's not a problem to clear monsters on Ravaged Blight regardless of the setup, whether you juice it up to, I don't know, 50% or difficult mods, right? But the bosses are really a pain in the ass. They have different mods, they can be resistant to your elemental damage, they have shit ton of HP, you can roll some modifiers that even make them more tanky, and yeah, as you can see, with my own damage at this investment, they are not killed right away. But as you can see later, when I hit monsters around bosses, they have much more HP than my corpses, right? So the corpses we spawn with Unearth do not deal a lot of damage. But the corpses, thanks to the special modifier on Ravaged maps that monsters have 200% increased health, are actually dealing a lot of damage. So that's the goal here. We do not build Meteor Tower, really. All we need to care about is to stay alive, because as you can see, we take pretty hefty damage when we are hit, right? We have block, we don't have spell suppression, we don't have grace, so we don't have like evasion. The block is pretty okay, right? And we regen some energy shield thanks to our Aurora Aegis. So yeah, we are, let's say, tanky enough with this investment to clear the map. Although you will die, because when you roll some strange modifiers like increased critical chance or extra damage taken as another element or something, with only 75% resistances, you are not tanky at all. So you need to be careful when building towers, to be careful about your lanes leaking, because there are of course the new Arch Nemesis mods that make some monsters to go through your stun lock issue. But the setup should be like here. So we have 3 basic towers: the chill tower level 3, the stun tower level 3, and empowering tower level 3. Then when you have a possibility, go with smoothering tower like here, so it decreases the elemental resistances, and we have in this build flammability as self-cast curse, right? So we have 2 curses, one is on the wand, self-casting, another is manually casted, right? So yeah, that was it. How to level up this build? So this is nothing else but a simple witch. So you probably start on the left side, going to the elemental overload, going down here and taking like maybe aura nodes, taking the minion affects you node, taking maybe some elemental damage node, then taking the Undertaker node, maybe going for chaos inoculation, maybe going for leadership. Yeah, it's not really hard. What I really recommend you to do is follow the Armabrand cremation walkthroughs and guides, because this is one of the best ways to level up campaign. So let's say I will link this video and you can follow those guides. But once you level up, I really suggest you buying the 5-way to make like level 93, because when you go for 4 runs of 5-way on TFT, you will simply make level 93 with just 2 divines, right? This is what I paid for. Not sure what is the price at the start of the league, but probably it's like, I don't know, 1 hour of doing normal blights, and things will get much easier for you early on if you do this, because you will have a lot of points to allocate, you will solve a lot of problems with your build, and you will be able to follow the, let's say, the Poorman's guide, which I try to create right now, how to make Ravaged Blights. So without further ado, let's talk about required items. Let me jump to this spreadsheet. So yeah, so what do we need to make this build work? So the crucial items that must be purchased, and the price will be different because this is the price that I paid mid-league after 1 month of playing, right? So Fanta Cremation, all the gems I have in this build are 2020. I have not a single gem with level 21 or 23% quality. So everything is made to be as cheapest as possible, and you can go even cheaper. So, you know, I made like a threshold for me, like 1 divine per rare item, and I used POE to optimize my damage. I will show you this in a second, but let's go through the mostly unique and gems that are required to make this build work. So first gem is Phanta Cremation, of course. You cannot go without it because the alternative version of this skill makes this gem to have a chance to explode a nearby corpse, and it's only 40% at 20% quality. But if you put 50% quality, it will be 100 chance, right? So normally we've achieved that with what I said previously, with Ashes of the Stars, which increases the quality of your gems by 30%, and it needed to be 30% to work smoothly. However, this is even more expensive than the usual cost, and if you look at the league start, it was, I don't know, 20 divines right away, then maybe 25. So the 30% quality was probably something around 30 divines, so almost everything that we paid for this build at this moment. Right now, Ashes is, you know, also 20 divines, but also the divines are more expensive. So Phantasmal Unearth is pretty cheap, although I believe this could even work with a normal Unearth, because we do not really need that damage from Unearth itself. All we need to do is like play around corpses that we kill, so stacking enemies on top of each other. But then with normal Unearth, you might find yourself in a, let's say, situation where you killed all the monsters and you have only bosses left, and you need to deal damage with your own corpses. For this reason, Phanta Unearth is useful. It will save your time. It will you know, increase the profit per hour. Yeah, and this is exactly why we use Templar Gloves +4 to make it a little bit better than using like rare gloves. And we cannot really use the gloves explained in here because they cost like 10 to 12 divines. I crafted them myself last league. I was super unlucky, and crafting these gloves is explained in this guide. Yeah, if you are lucky, you can craft it under 10 divines. Some of the meta mods are basically raw divine costs, so it cannot be crafted with, I don't know, 50c of being super lucky. You will need to unveil stuff, and then of course getting maybe +2 max cold rest is optional, but anyway, it's yeah, it's a process that will take you let's say deterministic amount of your currency. Yeah, those gloves are superior, but this is enough. Yeah, so I bought this for 2 divines with white sockets, because you need 3 green sockets and 1 red socket, and yeah, and it's not that easy to get because it's like an off color. So when you corrupt this item, to recolor this, you need 120 Valorbs, so this is almost half of divine. I feel it's better to just buy white sockets or buying the right sockets right away, right? So don't do a mistake here, don't go for a cheaper, even if you can. And all you need is +4, so +2 AoE, so that our Unearth is +4, right? So as you can see, it's projectile, AoE, and physical. So all you need is +4. Of course, you can get +5, but it's more expensive. It's like 5 divines plus, and you is Empower and Enhance here, right? So this is one of the gems in here and in here, right? Right now they are cheap. Probably when the league starts, it's much more expensive. So yeah, maybe this is optional, and you can go with, I don't know, level 2, level 1, I don't know, and level this up yourself during 5-way. It's possible to save some currency with this too. So another mandatory item is Diala, right? So Diala's Malefiction is an item that has been changed recently, and now it grants +2 levels to your gems socketed in red sockets, and gives 30% quality for gems socketed in green. And you can swap the gems, right? So you can put green gem in green socket and vice versa, right? So I didn't even like optimize my gems because probably this should be also red. This could be also red, I don't know, I don't care. You don't need this. All you need is like basic 5 link, and the most important things are that the cremation is in green socket and your empower is in red socket. This way you get +4 levels from your support. You don't need anything else, right? And we get 30% quality, and this is the reason why we chose the Dial as Malefiction, right? So this empower is like an extra, but this is the reason why we chose this armor. So we have 50% quality on it, and we have 100% chance to explode a nearby corpse when firing projectiles. This is important thing that we aim here, and it's pretty expensive. But when we look on the league start, the 5 link version of this armor was about 200 chaos, which is like, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of farming normal blight strategies if you follow my channel and you follow my guides, right? So that's not much, but you should get 6 link as soon as possible, because it's like 20% more DPS, which will help you to have better comfort at your runs. Then what we have is an nerf helmet. It's nothing special. What I've done is like bought any helmet with this enchantment and some energy shield and then some resistances. I believe you can craft this yourself. So all you need to do is buy like 5C helmet with proper base, like having energy shield, armor, I don't know, whatever you need. Although I don't have much armor, my runs are pretty comfortable, so the armor isn't that important for Ravaged Blights. Anyway, the belt is just something I had in my stash, a little bit of resistances, a little bit of energy shield, nothing fancy. I have life, even though I have chaos inoculation, so that's completely useless. It doesn't matter. I just want to show you that with barely no items, this build is still capable of clearing the hardest Ravaged strategies. Then Scepter. I set a threshold for 1 divine, although it can be any. It's nice if it's like +1. The reason why it should be a Scepter, I believe, it's because a shield charge is better to loot and roam the Ravaged Blight. You can save some money, I mean save some time, thus save some money. And wand is actually, you know, also good. How do you choose your weapon? If you want to buy it cheapest possible, or maybe optional, use POE, right? So you import your build. You should know this program, how to import it. Maybe let's showcase this, right? So you import this in here, right? So it's refreshed. Then we trade for this item. Weapon 1 is our slot. We don't change anything in here. What we do is press search and control and left click. It opens a page where we simply sort by a sum. So it's a weighted sum, and this weapon is the most optimal for our build. What we should do before actually doing this is maybe setting the full DPS of skills that we use, right? So maybe we should use curse, maybe we should use our wand, right? And only then run this again, right? So we are sure that POB picked up the gems we want. No, it took more time. Yeah. So again, it actually shows us a sword, and this is because Unearth deals more damage based on physical damage. It's very interesting what POB does, but maybe it's incorrect. I don't know. I never played with a sword on this build. That's something maybe we can test. So I've seen this already, and for this reason we can uncheck Unearth and run this again. So yeah, this is the way. It doesn't matter. What you should do is maybe limit your budget. I mean, limit the maximum cost to your budget, and then you just buy whatever it's best, right? So when you see like maybe someone is selling early on something very cheap that fits your build perfectly, then you go for it, right? So you actually don't need much. +1 level is usually enough, right? All spell skill gems can be like premium for defenses, so maybe that's better than +1 fire, but nothing fancy, right? So 1 divine is totally fair. Scepter is preferred, then you can use shield charge. If not, go with wand, with sword. I don't know. The sword thing is kind of funny. Anyway, then we have Empower. We need 2 of them, so that's roughly 80 chaos. Then we need Enhance. That's almost for free right now. Early on it can be a little bit more expensive, but not much. Then we need Thread of Hope, and yeah, I really like this setup. I don't think we can really change this because we would need a lot of points to spend, and if we save some points, then we can use cheaper cluster jewel, which I will tell you about in a second. So we use the Thread of Hope. You need a large ring, so you can allocate Arcane Focus, Blast Radius, Mental Rapidity, Heart of Flame, and Essence Search, right? So those nodes are important for us, and yeah, we can buy this for 1 divine right now. Maybe early on it's a little bit more expensive, but it's still not much, right? So the last thing we need to buy is 1 Enlighten level 3. Again, this can be more expensive early on. Right now it's pretty cheap because most people use level 4 and they buy this to corrupt. So yeah, and we use Enlighten to enable our auras, right? So what auras do we use? Actually, it's Tempest Shield, Clarity, it's for Watcher's Eye, Anomalous Purity of Elements, although it can be normal, Determination, and Discipline, right? So very basic auras, nothing fancy, right? So cost of those basic items that are actually mandatory to, to be able to play this successfully is like around 12 divines right now. It can be different early on, but again, pretty hard to say. I will league start next league with it and see how it goes. Although remember that this is also like aiming to have the worst items, not best items. So maybe investing more in your scepter could make your runs comfortable early on, and etc. Right? So this is a kind of weird approach which I have, but it's just to prove we can do this at the budget. So what are pretty, let's say, maybe not mandatory, but preferred items that can be maybe replaced early on, and those will be first items that you should upgrade, right? So these items you need to have, and these items you should buy as soon as possible, maybe even before starting Ravaged Blight strategies, right? So first could be Awakened Fire Penetration. Level 1 costs 10C. You can level this up in your 5-way when leveling your character. Then +1 amulet. So it's 1 divine. I know there were like 50, 100C early on because I traded them. So it can be bought definitely cheaper. Ring damage, it can be anything, but since we don't use anything fancy and we don't need that much resistances, all we need is like non-challenging skills to mana cost, so our cremation cost is pretty low since we are short on mana. Then you can just again use POB, use POB to optimize the weights and find your optimal ring, right? So this is very simple thanks to POB. You don't need to think about what mods are useful. Again, you limit your cost, blah blah blah. This way you let's say you fill the gap of having budget build by having damage, because we don't need that much defenses, although we need some defenses for comfort because the ravaged monsters and the rare monsters hit very very hard, which I experienced by testing this build and its minimum version. So Div Bone Offering, it gets us, the alternate quality of Bone Offering, where it is, okay, here. So the additional chance to block and spell, right? So we don't really have ashes and it's only 20%, so that's not much, but it's 2%. So this is why this optimal, you can go with a cheaper version. It doesn't really matter as long as you don't have ashes. If you had ashes, it would be more visible difference. Never mind. Like Enlighten level 3, because we want to put more auras. We want to go for Melding of the Flesh, and for this we will need Purity of Ice aura. If you want to fit it, we will need another Enlighten setup and small cluster joy, but that will come in a second. So Watcher's Eye, this is again to minimize your skill costs. especially like Bone Offering, which is self-casted and it costs 150% more cost. Right now it's 33 mana. You might not have it with a single cluster jewel setup, but when you allocate charisma to your amulet, maybe that's the Watcher's Eye is irrelevant, right? So yeah, that's something again optional that maybe you should buy early on to fit 4 auras, because then you will have low mana. But with only the basic auras, that's maybe an optional item. And then Purity of Elements, yeah, Anomalous one is a little bit better, especially if you use Ashes of the Stars. Early on we don't, but you can set up this, and that's what I did right now. I've put it in here. You can go with normal for 10C. Also dex bots, doesn't matter, only just you only need to care about your strength and dexterity to match your determination requirements, and dexterity for your skill gems requirements, like what we have 98 dex, right? So you need to have 98 dexterity. The dexterity on boots is really nice for this build, and onslaught is not that expensive itself. It's no elusive, no tailwind boots, nothing, so just simple boots, 1 divine, that's max. And cluster jewel, so this is one of the most expensive items to buy early on, although I remember last league I bought it right away, knowing that the price of prismatic heart cluster jewel will go up. What you can do is you can buy like 10 passive skills, 11 passive skills, like the cheapest with those 2 notables, right? You don't need to go for the 8 passive skills one that is yeah, or if even 8 passive skills is pretty cheap, right? So it depends what you want, right? We have extra points available at this level. We don't need to min-max this build to make this Ravaged Blight Strategy. You will do so to make this build more and more comfortable with time, but early on this is a premium purchase. You can buy this for a half divine, lowering this cost, right? 5-way. I really recommend spending money on this, because leveling with blighted maps is a process, and spending too much time doing normal blights is waste of your time. Maybe jumping straight into most profitable strategies of ravaged maps, especially with recent changes in 3.20, it's really recommended. So I would really go to Discord, check the price, and buy it as soon as possible. With Chaos Inoculation, you are immortal to chaos damage. You can AFK it. That's 30 minutes and done. Dying Sun. So this is optional flask, although the flask setup I have 4 flasks, because this is only what you need. You don't need 5th flask. This slot is for Oriat's End, which costs 20 divines, and it's not required to clear ravaged maps, but it will make it smoother. So you can put anything in here, whatever you want. Dying Sun. This flask, Dying Sun, is making your skills fire 2 additional projectiles, and you have charges 100% uptime during ravaged maps, so this is really helpful to our build. Then we have Granite Flask, Quicksilver Flask, and Sulfur Flask. The mods we need is increased armor, immunity to bleeding and corrupted blood, and increased movement speed, so maybe we move a little bit faster. Those flasks can be crafted yourself using, of course, Orbs of Alteration, and if you do any ravaged map, you will have a lot of flasks, right? Because they drop from ravaged maps. So this is basically the magic flasks are for free to you. So the only cost is Dying Sun, which can be again optional, but yeah, I would really buy this as soon as possible. So Aegis, and this item is really controversial, because at one hand it gives us maximum res, which is needed for melting of the flesh, but on the other hand it was one of the most expensive items early on. I'm not sure if meta changed, why it dropped in price. Maybe it's just such a good item for league starting. Now it's nowhere. Now it's nowhere in its price as it used to be, but as you can see, it's like maybe a few days into the league, it's 3 divines, something like that. But it starts with probably 5 to 6 divines early on. So this is expensive item, but it's worth it, right? But as you can see, maybe it's good to wait a week before you buy it. Maybe you can play with a normal shield with block and some energy shield, I don't know, armor, just a normal rare shield. So this is again optional for your build. So the total cost of those items are 17 divines, the mandatory items are 11 divines. Except for that, you need to add like 2 divines to buy all the 2020 skills. Yep, that makes like around 30 divines total costs to start with this build and, you know, doing maps. So how to get there? So yeah, if you followed my channel, then you saw that there are some normal blights strategies explained. This is pre-buff. It's before they buffed oils, and you could easily get like 3 to 4 divines with that. Now, if the oils are buffed, I believe 4 to 5 divines are achievable, no problem. Any build can do that. You can play without anything. So all of those items are, you know, irrelevant to this strategy. You just get 4 to 5 divines per hour, and you get those items. So after 6 hours, you should be able to afford the preferred version, right? So the base version will be probably something in your first day, right? The first items you buy, maybe doing normal blights easier, faster, you know, joicing it more. Then you will upgrade your build with these items and jump straight into the Ravaged maps, right? Your final upgrades will be melding of, maybe not final, but final early on upgrades will be melding of the flesh, increasing your resistances above 75%, which increases comfort a lot. For this, you will need small cluster jewel that makes your reservation efficiency better. Then you need melding of the flesh, of course. It's minus 4% of maximum elemental resistances. Then you need impossible escape to allocate those nodes around unwavering stance, right? So +2 to max all res, +1 to max cold res, and maybe you can also allocate like shield defenses if you have like some points left later on, or if you level up. So that's the mandatory stuff for increasing your defenses. But the final version of the build is, maybe you can follow some of the official guides, right? So here you have versions with crit, which costs like mirror plus. Then you can sort your POE ninja by the builds, seeing what other guys do, what are the changes in 3.21. Maybe there is some new stuff that you can take in, but as you can see, usually it's like this armor and Ashes of the Stars, Bridges Veil. There should be Curse on Hit in the left ring. At least I prefer the extra damage from critical strikes to be mitigated rather than being hexproof. But yeah, this is this guy's choice. Yeah, there is not much. You can see like multiple cluster jewel. You will see different ways of, you know, setting your defenses. There are many versions you can go with this build, and it's all fine. But for our little, let's say, purpose, we don't need to be that good. We don't need that high defenses. We don't need that high budget. And for this reason, I created this video where we talk about the minimum version for Ravaged Blight maps. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I will link everything in the description under this video, and yeah, stay tuned for more Ravaged Blight strategies, because I'm gonna test now with this build in and out what's possible and what's not, and what's best to do in the next league. So thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Cheers, bye.